Good morning, friends and colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you had a nice sleep. Yesterday, we had a really good dinner and conversation, and the people actually stayed until late hours. And then I think um, we have an appetite to continue to have a great discussion. So that's a good point. Having very productive first day, we're going to continue to the second day, which is focusing on promoting lifecycle refrigerant management by utilizing carbon credit mechanisms. And then, as you see, this Asia Group seminar is supported by partners. In particular, well, the Asian Development Bank has implemented the technical assistance program, and well, this session is relying on the assets of their products and also their elaboration regarding LRM and carbon crediting consideration. To moderate, I would like to invite Mr. Tamai, who is the TA expert of ADB. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Kato-san. And Sawasdee Kap. I'm Tamai from the OECC, and I'm also serving as the international expert for the TA, Technical Assistance 6730 of the ADB on the promoting lifecycle management of fluorocarbons. We have been working together with 4 countries in particular, the Maldives, Mongolia, Vietnam, and the Philippines to come up to first investigate to support, to support the promoting the life cycle management in each countries. Today we are going to walk through kind of the carbon what's carbon market, and then we would like you to think a little bit about how you could utilize this carbon market mechanisms to promote the life cycle management of fluorocarbons in each country. As I have been in the climate community for decade, and the Kato-san for 2 decades or something. So we are very much familiar with the idea of the carbon market. But today, this is the fluorocarbon or the ozone community. Most of the people comes from ozone community. So some of you may not have much idea, or you might not know about the carbon market. So after this morning's session, we would want you to take a next step if you may like this idea. So that you can start from the very first step. I would like to give a framing presentation first about the why carbon market may be useful for you. Is it working? Okay. 下の方. Okay. So we have, as we discussed yesterday, there are several issues, difficulties in the promoting life cycle management of fluorocarbons. And some of them, or many of them, may be somehow related to the money. When you want to introduce some project for destruction site, you may face difficulty in initial investment cost. And or if you want to do introduce a new refrigeration system that requires that uses the natural refrigerant, you may also need the initial investment. And operational costs, especially for the recovery and destruction, you will face a difficulty in keep paying those costs. And when you are going to do some project, you may need to incentivize the participants, but there's currently not many opportunity for giving the incentives. And because the HFCs are invisible, so you may want to make sure that the recovered gas are properly distracted. But without any measures, it's very difficult to make sure. And oh, I didn't intend that. Okay. And currently, we don't have much recovery network in place. So it's a kind of chicken and egg issue, but without the refrigerant recovery network, we can't start the project. And because there's no refrigerant recovery network, we can't start the project and so on. So that's the difficulties. This is a kind of the list of possible difficulties we are facing now. So through if we have some money, then we could solve those problems, such as lower investment cost or lower operational cost for recovery. And that we could incentivize people with some money, or because we have the initial support, then we can utilize the money to further promote and enhance the recovery network. That would be the ideal solution. So we wish if there are some money. Yes, so that's why we are focusing on the potential of the carbon market for you to be utilized for solving these issues. Today, actually, we have, as we discussed yesterday, we have upstream measures that the conversion of the refrigerant, midstream measures, reducing, minimizing the or preventing the leakage during the use, and downstream measures, recovery, destruction, and the reclamation. Of course, in each step, we could apply the carbon market, but for today, let us focus more on the downstream for the simplicity of the discussion, because actually the Ministry of the Environment of Japan and the ADB are very much interested more on the downstream measures, because upstream measures are already somehow addressed by the Montreal Protocol, while for carbon is, I mean, the climate community, the downstream measures may be somewhere we can do a little bit more. This is a typical. I'm sorry, the arrangement is not very good, but this is a typical steps of the recovery and destruction project. So first, we collect the refrigerant from the equipment, and we may need to store it for a while, and then we transport to the destruction site, and finally we destroy this refrigerant. So through this process, carbon credit can be generated relative to the how can I say, the CO2 equivalent. That if there is no destruction project, this amount of refrigerant should have been emitted into the atmosphere. So compared to this, we destroy this amount of refrigerant. So this amount of emission is avoided. This destruction of HFC brings reduction of total emissions. And if we do this destruction, it will be permanent reduction of the permanent reduction of the emissions. Permanence is if you are not very familiar with the carbon markets, the why we say explicitly permanence, but it's very interesting. But for carbon market people, permanence is very important. So it's natural that many climate change community people are interested in investing for the HFC with the carbon market, but currently we don't have many methodologies, as we saw the yesterday's discussion. I raised two examples, and those are very, say, few examples. For American Carbon Registry, we have the conversion of refrigerant. This is upstream measures. And we also have, say, for a specific destruction site, we have the methodology. But in general, we don't have many destruction methodology or projects so far. That's why we invited CC Lab here today, because they are developing say global methodology for this downstream measures. So through promoting the carbon market mechanism in the HFC emission reduction measures, we would like to achieve those conditions. I'm very sorry that it's difficult to read. So we want to streamline the HFC methodologies for destruction and reclamation, and to be included in so-called the registries of the many carbon market, I would say carbon market registries, and possible inclusion of other HFC lifecycle management activities to methodology, not only the downstream measures, destruction measures. At the same time, we wish we can expand the say possible methodologies about HFCs. But yes, of course, there are several peoples that are quite skeptic or the very cautious about introducing HFC carbon market. And there are some good reasons to be so. So we would also want to avoid that a few conditions that I listed here. Pervasive incentive for HFC management should be avoided. We don't want the how can I say the EO methodology, such as we don't want to say express that we had reduced that much, that it's actually not happening. So this kind of the pervasive incentive should be avoided, and we also want to avoid the HFC venting following the false reporting of destruction. We might claim that we destroyed this amount, but it was actually vented into the atmosphere. But still, we claim that this amount of HFC carbon credit. We want to avoid this situation, so we need certain measures to avoid those conditions. Today, we will have listen to a series of presentations. First, we would like to invite the CC Lab for the methodology they are preparing on the HFC recovery and destruction, and ensuring high integrity. Integrity is also maybe a new word for you, but this is very important idea. This is more like the quality of the carbon credit. And followed by the Miss Yamanaka from the Daikin. She will make a presentation about the cost structure of HFC recovery and destruction project, lessons learned from the efficacy JCM. So as I mentioned before, the cost for recovery is very important, and we hope, or one of the possible way of using the revenue from carbon market could be to compensate some of the costs for occurring from the recovery and destruction activities. So her presentation will give you some insight about this amount of this much of the money will be necessary for doing this kind of projects, so that you might be a bit motivated to introduce the carbon market. And finally, I would like to invite the Yanase-san from the ADB headquarters. This is about more like upstream measures, but still about the carbon market. JFJCM, one of the JCM carbon market scheme, has a potential to promote life cycle management especially in the energy efficiency and the converting the refrigerant. So he will make a presentation on that. And after the series of presentation, I will invite you to the group discussion. And before doing that, I'd like to acknowledge you that our TA has been preparing so-called knowledge product, published document for promoting the life cycle management of refrigerants through carbon markets. Is it working? Oops. Objectives, target audience, and the timeline is shown here. We have 3 key objectives: to promote life cycle fluorocarbon management, to provide a strategic handbook to policymakers, and to provide specific insights about complex technical matters related to the HFC and the carbon market. Target audience will be the administrative people in charge of both carbon or the climate change and the ozone layer administration, with specific agent case studies. We are expecting this to come up by, or at least we hope to present the final draft by COP, and hopefully within this year. But the publishing date is to be determined later. Yes, because this is very new thing, so we have some featured approach or technical issues that would be touched upon within these publications. Those are convention about the waste exporting that some of the groups works yesterday may have identified. Tips, requirements for destruction facility, institutional arrangement, cooperation between the climate change community and the ozone layer community in terms of the administration, identifying baselines, methodology currently available for in this area, and we may not be that explicit, but some of you may be interested in the CAN MLF project issue carbon credits. So we may not be very explicit, but we think we can give some hint for that. And inclusion of HSC or ODS into NDC for Paris Agreement, and especially for accounting. So I suppose we can give some idea for you on those matters in particular. So I'd like to stop here, and then I'd like to invite the Sine for the methodology of the destruction. Thank you.
All right, thank you to my son, and thank you to Japan's Ministry of the Environment, the Asian Development Bank, to the Climate and Clean Air Coalition for having me at this event. It's a real honor, and I've learned so much already in the past day and a bit. And thank you to Kato-san for all of the organization and the invite. So today I will talk to you about methodologies for life cycle refrigerant management, and in particular, the way that we at the Carbon Containment Lab think about ensuring high integrity. So as we're getting these projects off the ground, how can we be sure that the carbon credits that they're generating are real and true and can build credibility in this space? So before I dive into the work that we do, I just want to give a little bit of an introduction to myself and the organization that I'm representing. So my name is Sinead Crotty. I'm a scientist. My background is in environmental engineering, and I serve as director of the Carbon Containment Lab, which is a nonprofit organization that recently spun out of Yale University. Our goal is to apply our scientific and investment expertise to help high-quality climate solutions reach scale. So we're really focused on implementation, on getting projects off the ground, and thinking about how we can bring sort of high integrity methodologies to projects to help them scale, but in a way where they're building sort of real additional marketplaces. And so over the last sort of 3-4 years, we've focused a lot on life cycle refrigerant management. We've looked at the potential to mitigate sort of near-term warming pathways. And we are convinced that actually life cycle refrigerant management is one of the ways in which we can make the biggest impact in the near term. And so it's become one of our real priorities. So how did we come to this conclusion? Well, as the Earth warms, the demand for cooling is increasing. We heard a lot of presentations last week around this, but this is 2 graphics around the projected emissions of HFCs by country and by sector. And what you see is that there's an increasing demand for cooling, an increasing amount of HFC emissions between now and 2035 when it peaks, and then there's projected decrease down by 2050. And this increase in demand for cooling is largely due to the phase out of HCFCs, but also an increasing demand for cooling. And these are especially pronounced in the developing world. And so the result of this is that the installed refrigerant bank is quite large. This is some modeling from the EIA, which was published in 2022, which estimates that the combined CO2 equivalents contained in the installed refrigerant bank, so that's essentially your ODS and your HFCs in existing and new equipment, will be over 90 billion tons of CO2 equivalents on a GWP 100 basis. So for reference, this is equivalent to over 3 years of our global energy sector emissions. And so it's actually a very large chunk of emissions that really can truly be targeted. But as we know, the Montreal Protocol does a fantastic job of looking upstream of this installed refrigerant bank and sort of controlling the production and consumption of these gases. But once these gases enter the market, it's no longer considered compliance to mitigate the downstream emissions. And so the result is over 2.6 billion tons of CO2 equivalents emitted into the atmosphere each year as these refrigerants are either leaked or are vented into the atmosphere. And so the concept of life cycle refrigerant management essentially just says that these downstream emissions can be mitigated, and there's a lot of different points in the supply chain and in sort of the life cycle that can be targeted. And so it can include leak detection and mitigation. It can include recovery of refrigerant, reuse, recycling, reclaim, or destruction. But despite the fact that there is sort of a pathway for doing so, there are also lots of challenges. Challenges, as we heard yesterday by a number of different parties, there's a lot of infrastructure lacking. Infrastructure, but also hardware. So things like recovery machines, refillable cylinders, reclamation and destruction facilities. It's actually generally an issue, not just in developing countries, but especially in developing countries. And we heard from island nations as well yesterday, where this type of infrastructure is really, truly lacking. In addition, those best suited to actually get out there and implement life cycle refrigerant management, there's a lot of, so these are your technicians, your sort of HVAC technicians who are on the ground, who are interacting at the end of life or at servicing of this equipment. They oftentimes don't have appropriate training, but we did hear about a lot of the work for capacity building yesterday. So it was really sort of optimistic and exciting to hear about that. And then finally, it's really about these financial mechanisms, right? So there's very few pathways to making these processes profitable. And therefore, the result is that refrigerant is just not being recovered at scale around the world. And so, given our background and our initial research into this area, we really focused on this one particular barrier around financial incentives and business models. And we hypothesized that carbon markets based in really high integrity methodologies could help address this gap. And so, just sort of what is out there right now? What marketplaces exist where you can credit life cycle refrigerant management? There's sort of two main pathways, and it depends on who the buyers are. If you have corporate buyers, these are typically companies that are trying to achieve their net zero goals. They typically operate on the voluntary carbon markets, which are essentially the testing ground of methodologies, which will ultimately be moved to the compliance market. The compliance market typically have higher sort of rigor of their methodologies, and they also command higher prices. Alternatively, if your buyers are governments, we see Japan's joint crediting mechanism and Paris Agreement's Article 6.2 and maybe ultimately 6.4 can help essentially governments in purchasing countries use carbon credits against their NDCs. So despite advancing similar goals, each of these market types do have distinct characteristics which are worth noting. So I'll start with the voluntary carbon market. The voluntary carbon market does actually have methodologies that addresses a wide range of activities within the LRM space. So we see methodologies for that are of use for operating equipment as well as end of life. We see from infrared leak detection to reclaim, different pathways of destruction. But one of the limitations in this marketplace is that there is really only applicability in a certain number of countries for most of these methodologies. So you'll see I've highlighted the two in sort of dashed lines where there's international applicability, but many of them are only sort of applicable in the USA, in Canada, or in Mexico. Moving on to the other main marketplace, Article 6 in Japan's JCM. Similarly can address HFCs, and again, with the goal of helping meet country level NDCs. What I'll say here is there is a sort of a smaller number of LRM activities that can be targeted, or at least thus far have been targeted. The excellent thing about this mechanism is it's more applicable to a larger number of countries, but there are stipulations. So you can see with the Japan's JCM destruction methodology, it's only applicable if a country is on track to meet their NDCs and is including HFCs in their national inventories. So this is something that I think in terms of capacity building could be essentially very useful to moving forward on this mechanism. But regardless of the market pathway that you're on, any of these project activities will require a methodology. So what is a methodology? This is essentially the rule book that project developers have to follow. It stipulates exactly what data you need to take. It stipulates what sort of activities are in or out. It's also the rule book with which verifiers will come back and say whether that project activity was real or not. Now, while methodologies are really critical to the development of this space, across these marketplaces, they vary widely in their scope, in their length, in the timing of when credits are generated, in the protections around sort of ensuring high integrity. And while this might be totally okay in these early stages of a market, an issue starts to crop up where you no longer know each individual player. And if you're trying to do millions of tons of abatement, you basically start to worry about the opportunity for fraud or perverse incentives creeping up. And so it's really important as we start building this marketplace that we focus on promoting high integrity practices early. And so the Integrity Council for the Voluntary Carbon Market, which is our ICVCM, has started the process towards trying to implement high integrity practices across methodologies. And so they have 10 what they call core carbon principles, or CCPs. In the interest of time, I'm just going to focus on the 4 that are of most relevance to LRM activities. But if anyone is interested, these slides are available. There's a link to this document, and I'm happy to talk about other CCPs. So the 4 that I'll focus on today are additionality, permanence, quantification, and transparency. So moving into additionality. The key question around additionality is, did the carbon finance enable the emissions reductions? So essentially, if the project activity is profitable or is regulated and enforced, then in theory, there is no need for carbon finance, and that activity shouldn't generate a carbon credit. While it's sort of simple in concept, it can actually be quite difficult to measure and sort of guarantee in reality. So what I'm gonna do is walk through a few example scenarios where there may be some uncertainty around additionality. I'll give our interpretation of the ICVCM, so that's the Integrity Council's perspective on whether the project is additional. And then I'll give implications for methodology. So if you're generating a methodology for that type of project activity, I'll talk through some of the considerations you should keep in mind for thinking about how you promote integrity, and in this case, additionality. So the first example scenario is in a project country where HFC phase down has started. So the question is a carbon credit for reclaiming HFCs additional? The worry here is that once you begin phase down, you are essentially creating an opportunity for the increase in the price of virgin refrigerant, which may create incentives for reclaim to occur in the absence of carbon finance. So how do you ensure whether this project is additional or not? According to the ICVCM, these types of projects can be additional, but they require data. So they can be additional if investment analyses shows that that reclamation activity is not profitable without the incentive. So in the ICVCM's guidebook, there are sort of very explicit pathways towards conducting these investment analyses. But the important thing to keep in mind for methodologies is that financial incentives are going to evolve over time and in relation to where you are in your phase down schedule. And therefore, one of the things that I think is very important is thinking about additionality as not stagnant in time. A project activity that's additional today may not actually be additional in 5 years' time. And so building in investment analyses on sort of annual stages and that are applicable to each individual country's context will be important additionality checks as you move forward and ensure that projects today, but also in the future, continue to be additional. The next scenario is around a country with an unenforced venting prohibition. So the question is a carbon credit for recovering and destroying HFCs additional? So this brings us to this idea of, if regulation exists, can a project ever truly be additional? Because in theory, it should be occurring with or without any outside finance. This is a question that I think is incredibly relevant to the folks in the room today, and is something that I think I hope we can have productive discussion about, and how you actually go about measuring whether or not a regulation is enforced. So according to the ICVCM, it's actually quite clear that these types of projects can be additional, but you need to provide evidence. You need to provide evidence that that prohibition is not enforced. So for methodologies, again, we think that you should require evidence demonstrating that there is either no regulation or a lack of enforcement for recovered gas. This can take a couple of different forms. It can be something as simple as an attestation from your national ozone officer that despite having a venting prohibition, there is no enforcement. But it can also look like sort of showing that there isn't the infrastructure at scale with which to enforce that regulation. So if you can show that there are no reclamation facilities, that there are no sort of recycling machines or refillable cylinders, right? Some of the situations that we see on the ground, that's another way of showing that the regulation couldn't possibly be enforced. So I'd love to talk with anyone who's interested in these questions about how we can think about what evidence is relevant and at what frequency should the evidence be required to show that the projects are actually additional both now and in the future. So moving on to the second core carbon principle, this is permanence. So the key question around permanence is there any risk of this emission reduction being reversed? So I like to think about this as from the point of view of the atmosphere over the short term. Did I see a reduction in greenhouse gas emissions, in HFC emissions, for example? And so the first example scenario is around a stockpile of CFC. And the question is destroying that CFC stockpile actually permanent? The ICVCM perspective would be quite clear in this case. Yes, it is highly permanent, not only because you destroyed the gas, but also because it's phased out globally. And therefore, there's no risk in having the destruction activity that you undertook lead to an upstream production that otherwise wouldn't have occurred. So in this case, it's clear, but it actually gets a little less clear when you're at a different sort of stage in your phase down or phase out. And so wrong way. The implication for the methodology is that methodology should actually consider not only sort of the permanence of the gas that is recovered and destroyed, but also how that LRM activity might impact your upstream production, especially in relation to where you are in your phase down schedule. So I'll give another example that really brings this to the fore. So the second example around permanence is a methodology that credits the act of recovering HFCs from equipment. And the question is that emission reduction, is that simply recovering refrigerant, is that always permanent? According to the ICVCM, the answer is it depends. So if that refrigerant is recycled or reclaimed and sort of reinstalled into equipment, the assumption is that that gas will be emitted over the life cycle of the equipment. And therefore, that pathway, from the point of view of the gas that you have captured and put into equipment, is of low permanence. Alternatively, if the gas is destroyed, it can be high permanence, so long as there is evidence of no increase in virgin production as a result of the project activity. And so what does this mean? There's sort of two levels that you need to consider here. First is methodologies need to consider sort of proof of gas fate. It's not simply enough to credit the act of recovery, because there's a lot of end fates beyond that point that are feasible. The second piece that you need to keep in mind is country level data on production and consumption are actually quite important. We went through this exercise when we wrote the methodology for destruction of HFCs to see if there was ever an example of countries using destruction to allow for an increase in their production towards their goals, or towards their essentially meeting their phase down and out of ODS and HCFCs. So that's actually data that is available with the Ozone Secretariat's office that can be checked on an annual scale. And what we found was that there was one example in the entire history of ODS phase out where a country did have a very small amount of destruction, which allowed for a slight increase in their production. So essentially it allowed them to meet their goals, but it was only in one time period. And so we were quite confident with that evidence that essentially never in history has destruction been used to effectuate more upstream production. And again, I think this is an area of sort of data collection that can be built into methodologies where you can verify through time that this isn't changing and that the destruction that you're undertaking is not effectuating more upstream production. Okay, third fluorocarbon principle is quantification. There's three main questions around quantification. Can you accurately measure the emissions reductions? If not, what safeguards are in place to make sure that you have conservative sort of assessments of the amount of credits you're generating? And finally, is there high quality data that's available? Can you truly demonstrate that your counterfactual, so that's what would have happened in the absence of your project, is real? And so the example that I have here is around a methodology that assumes HFC reclamation displaces virgin production of HFCs on a one-to-one basis. So this is essentially the sort of underlying theory that allows for HFC reclaim to be credited on the American Carbon Registry, the ACR methodology. As part of that methodology, it's simply an assumption of displacement. And so my question is, what data should be required in order to support this assumption? And according to the ICVCM, this is actually a pretty difficult interpretation to make. So quantification of displacement is difficult, and it's because it involves multiple sort of interrelated variables. And so there's actually quite an unclear pathway towards quantification of that displacement. One of the possible recommendations is to discount the total amount of credits that you're generating. The idea of discounting it is essentially you acknowledge some risk or uncertainty, and therefore for the amount of gas that you reclaim, you don't necessarily credit the full amount because you assume that there is an uncertainty in the amount of displacement that's occurring. The implications for carbon methodologies, I think, are actually quite critical and are not everyone will agree here. Again, methodologies can require upstream data on consumption and try and draw connections between a decrease in production and an increase in reclaim to try and make these connections between the project activity and any possible displacement. But truly, it's quite hard to prove causality here between the project activity and any decrease in upstream production. So I think this is an area where we need to decide as we're building carbon markets if this uncertainty is acceptable or if it's not. And I think this is something where, as we think about building a carbon marketplace of high credibility that will also fetch higher prices, there may be some difficult decisions to be made around whether methodologies for things like reclamation have a place in the carbon market. And so if you're interested in learning a little bit more about sort of how you might quantify this displacement, we've recently published a technical note sort of making the case for why the carbon market might not actually be the best place for reclaim credits, but instead thinking about how regulation might be able to step in because there are environmental benefits to reclaim. And so this is also just a graphic here from subsection H of the AIM Act. It's a proposed rule where I think it's by 2028, there will be a large portion of incoming, essentially, gas that will be charged into equipment will be required to be reclaimed. And so essentially, is there ways to increase the market share of reclaimed gas through regulation rather than through carbon markets? And so I think this is something we might be able to discuss further in the discussions. Okay, the final CCP that I'll discuss today is transparency. And the key question is, are all project activities traceable and verifiable? So the example scenario I have for you is a methodology that credits HFC destruction. It could also be reclamation, but the key question is, how can you ensure whether the gas that was used was legitimately recovered from equipment and not just virgin gas? According to the ICVCM, tracking is incredibly important through all points in its chain of custody. So each stage must be verified to ensure that the gas was legitimately reclaimed and not substituted with virgin gas. So we heard from groups yesterday who are working on software to help with this. And I think that's an area where it'll be incredibly important to move forward and apply it in these program areas, because I think that tracking of the gas and ensuring that you aren't having sort of fraudulent mechanisms creep in and get paid is very important. So again, implications for methodologies: require software, track chain of custody, and be very rigorous about that. And then in addition, tracking the incentives to ensure that the payment for the recovery, so if the payment to that technician who's actually recovering the gas from equipment, is less than the price of virgin gas, so that you're not creating a perverse incentive whereby it might make sense for a technician to purchase virgin gas and destruct it purely for the carbon credit. So, summary of recommendations here. There's sort of two big ideas to keep in mind. The first one is be responsive to change. A methodology should not have assumptions that are set in stone. It should build in mechanisms that can be responsive to a changing economic or regulatory landscape. And number two is require rigorous data. I know that there is a dearth of data across a lot of these landscapes, but I think there is a lot of efforts to trying to build that up. And I think as you do so, it enables sort of a much better carbon marketplace where the activities can actually be paid for. So I've gone through a number of CCPs, many different example scenarios. Where do we go from here? What are we excited about? What should we move forward on? So we spoke a little bit about the methodology that my colleagues and I published this year. It's a second draft. It's gone through peer review and public consultation, which you can find on our website. Luckily, or we're very excited to announce that the Global Heat Reduction Registry, it's a smaller registry, but they've taken on our methodology and are going through their own peer review. But this can lead to real carbon credits that are on a marketplace. But I'll note that at the Carbon Containment Lab, this just happens to be the first methodology that we worked on. We're not here to necessarily promote just one. So if anyone in this room is thinking about working on a methodology or thinking about a project that may be additional, but you're hoping to sort of get feedback on how it can be high integrity, our door is always open, right? We are really focused on getting projects on the ground and implemented. And so any feedback from the folks in the room would be wonderful, and we would love to see how we can help in any way possible. So in concluding thoughts, what we're excited about, better software. We have Ref Next and Genva Next. We have groups like Recool It. There's a number of different organizations who are really pushing this forward. We know we have emerging platforms and marketplaces. JCM has been fantastic getting projects on the ground. You heard that yesterday. It's really an exciting time to be in lifecycle refrigerant management. And so what we want to do is think about how we can support new projects, support the people in this room who are actually doing the work. And with that, I just want to say a very big thank you and sorry for going over time.
Thank you very much, Sine, for your comprehensive presentation. We heard many, say, do's and don'ts on the carbon markets. So you might have felt a bit troublesome to walk into this, but at the same time, you got some, confidence that you're going to do the right things, and for doing the right things, we need this sort of the considerations. So I think that's very good opening or giving the context on the carbon market. And out of the context, I was really impressed that you refer to the national inventory, because many say credit people don't care about the national inventory. And actually, I worked with the modest colleagues here, the Pirasan and the ministry, as well as the Indonesian colleagues on preparing the HFC emission inventory that may be introducing their BTR in some days. So that's very good to that you were referring to that. Next, I would like to invite Ms. Yamanaka from the Daikin on the cost structure of the destruction project. Thank you.
Thank you, Stamai-san. Can you see my face? Sorry, that flower is beautiful, but that hide me. Anyway, thank you very much. And then I appreciate, and then I really appreciate Japanese environmental ministry invite me to speak at this event, and I'm very honored. Thank you very much. And then good morning, all folks here. I'm really glad to talk about this today. So I'd like to explain our experience in Vietnam. Sorry, I have to. I'm sorry. Thank you, Kato-san. I'd like to explain our experience in Vietnam. Before I get into the presentation, I'd like to talk a bit about my company and myself. I'm Miki Yamanaka of Daikin Industries Japan, headquartered in Japan. I'm from Japanese headquarters. And then my division is on CSR Global Environment Center. That is not really the business side. We are kind of the company's green heart. So we have to promote the environmental activities in our company, and then promote our environmental technologies all over the world. That is my mission. So today I would like to focus on our initiative in life cycle refrigerant management that is called Ecosystem in Vietnam. So I'd like to talk about the three main topics about the basic scheme of refrigerant management, what kind of scheme we have to look at, that kind of things I'd like to explain. And then number two is the refrigerant management demonstration in Vietnam as a part of JCM assistance project, so which is sponsored by Japanese government. And then finally, the economic mechanism that is necessary to support the entire scheme. So skip this. So, when we worked in Vietnam, we identified, stakeholders to be participate in this scheme. Number one, recovery technician. Number two, cylinder management site, and then number three is distraction site, and then number four is reclamation site. People always talk about recovery engineer, recovery technician, and then distraction facility, and then also reclamation facility. But we cannot forget the cylinder management site. That is quite important part of the scheme. I would like to explain why that is so. So, sorry. When you see this part, recovery technicians, recover the refrigerant, all those technicians, bring all those equipment, tools to the, the customer site, right? So the cylinders cannot be really large. Cylinders has to be really small. So in the cylinders here, they use very small cylinders, like 20 kilogram cylinders, very small. But the cylinder, all those small cylinders, if those cylinders are sent to distraction site or reclamation site directly, it's going to cost a lot in transportation. And then also, the manpower here, all those people has to, get rid of the refrigerant out of the small cylinders and then clean the small cylinder and then send back all those cylinders to the, recovery technicians. It's a lot of work. They might not do that. So if we, have this cylinder management site, all those all those small cylinders get together in a cylinder management site, the providing that all those cylinder management site, multiple sites has to be located in various places. That would help a lot. And then, that would be gathered here. And then in the refrigerant, in the small cylinders, transferred to the bigger size of cylinders, like 100 kilogram cylinders. And then afterwards, those bigger size cylinders would be sent to distraction site or reclamation site after analysis of the quality. This cylinder management site has to have the capacity to make the judgment whether the refrigerant should be distracted or eligible for reclamation. So that kind of judgment has to be there. Those recovery technicians cannot do that because that analysis equipment cannot be, the technicians cannot be afford the analysis equipment because that is very expensive. So if this cylinder management site is capable of make the judgment, that would help a lot as well. So, and then I have to point out that, the route to recover the refrigerant from the commercial air conditioners or residential air conditioners are totally different. The commercial air conditioners, those are the large, relatively big companies, that's not the usual consumers, right? So the manufacturers like us, can reach those commercial equipment owners. So supply chain is not that long. But when we look at the residential side, when manufacturers sell the equipment to the dealers, and the dealers might sell to the other dealers, and then might end up with the consumers with so many layers. Right. So this residential equipment is not reachable by the equipment manufacturers. That is a problem. So, for that commercial side, we may be able to reach out. But, for the residential side, we have to find out the way to gather the equipment itself. That is a totally different route and the method is necessary. So I would like to focus on the commercial side today. So again, I'd like to point out the importance of the, developing the scheme. Number one is, as I said, cylinder management is quite important. Effective cylinder management is crucial really crucial. And I have to ask, you can ask, MZ people here later in how important that is. Effective cylinder management is crucial for the successful implementation of the entire scheme. And then any issues in this area can disrupt the entire flow of the recovery and the reclamation and the distraction process. Needed to make sure cylinders are always available. If there is no cylinder as the recovery technicians, recovery cannot be done. So always cylinder has to be there. So we have to make sure that in the cylinder management side, when they receive the cylinder and then they get rid of the transfer the refrigerant to the large size cylinders, and afterwards, they will clean the inside of the cylinders and then send them back to the technicians. Why they have to clean the cylinders? Because it is important to avoid the contamination. If the cylinder is really dirty and then get back to the recovery technicians, even if recovery technicians recover the technicians in a good condition, but if the refrigerant is put in the really dirty cylinders, that good state of the refrigerant would be contaminated with some impurities in the cylinders that would disrupt entire scheme, and then that is a waste of the natural resources. We need to avoid it, so that the cleaning of the cylinders are really, really important. And then send them back to the cylinder, to send the cylinders back to the technicians is really important. On time is really important. Make sure that cylinders are always available. And then also the tracking system is important, as CC Love explained, and then also yesterday Mr. Ashes explained the tracking system is really important to track all the quantities, and then that would reduce the work of the technicians and then all those people associated with the scheme. So that is quite important. And then I personally like RefNext because that RefNext is developed in Japan, and then that RefNext is survived in all these really difficult requirements from the Japanese companies and then Japanese technicians, and then also the Japanese government. That RefNext is really compliant with the Japanese law, fluorocarbon emission reduction law and everything. So since that survived all the requirements, heavy requirements in Japan, I think that is one of the most reliable platforms that I know. But maybe there are some other platforms, but this is one of them, I believe. So again, I'm not a salesperson of Gemba Next though. Okay, so this is the Japanese platform. As Mr. Miyake explained yesterday, this is the Flow Emission Control Act in Japan that covers the commercial air conditioners. Only the commercial air conditioners. So now, what happens to the residential air conditioners? That residential air conditioners is covered by the Residential Equipment Recycle Act. The different act exists. So because as I explained, the recovery route is totally different. So that, the laws which control are also different. So, that law requires all the reporting from the recovery technicians and the cylinder management side, and then distraction and the reclamation side. All of the people has to report what they received and then what they processed to the government, either government or municipal government. So that is decided by the law. So that's really important. But if we have the tracking system, and all those bothersome can be treated by the tracking system, so that technicians do not have to be bothered by all those tedious work. I think that is very good tool. Why not use it? That's my that's my thinking. Okay. So now I would like to explain the refrigerant management demonstration in Vietnam. So the demonstration, that the project was, formation is like this. The government, the government gave some funding, some funding to Malubeni. Malubeni is the leader of this project. Under Malubeni, and then Daikin the leader of South project, and then we controlled Daikin Vietnam activities, and then also MZ, and then also the Gemba Next. All those are partners, conducted that project in Vietnam. What Malubeni did was that, they tried to develop destruction facility in Vietnam. It is still the trial stage. So in Vietnam, there's no full-fledged destruction site yet. So we needed to find out who can do this destruction. We may need some further assistance from the international institute, and then also Japanese government or other governments. So that kind of things we're doing. And then the demonstration was done in January this year, and then we got all the people invited Marubeni, of course Marubeni, Daikin, MZ, and then Gemba Next, but also Vietnamese government, and then Vietnamese universities, and then also refrigerant treatment companies, and then Japanese government organizations such as OECC. All the people gathered together, and then we discussed. We actually experienced it. How to recover the refrigerant, and the transfer the cylinders, and how the cylinder management is done, and then how left next works. So we So we went through all the processes by using actual equipment and also tracking system. So this is the pictures, and then on the third day, those are all those work are done in 2 days. But in the third days, we get together and then discussed what is the issue. What are the issues to be solved, and how to solve those issues? We had a very intensive discussion together. There are so many issues, so that we cannot, we cannot solve them at once. We left all those issues to be solved, later years, later days. So now, still, we're on the discussion. Discussion is all still continuing. So we identified in all those items. I think we have already talked about it. Some other people have already talked about it, but in the discussion, we identified all those four main key main issues. One is the initial investment. Initial investment is really important, for the cylinder management side, and also destruction side, and also the recovery reclamation side. All those places need to have certain amount of investment. So who can support it? And then also that how do you call it? The depreciation cost. Also important, because depreciation cost, that would last like 10 years, something for 10 years. The original, the cost of the treatment would be really high. So how can we treat that depreciation cost as well? So all those cost construction has to be considered, and how to deal with it is another question. And then also the recovery people has to have the adequate tools. So many recovery technicians, thousands recovery technicians, how can provide tools to all those people. That is another issue. And then how to control them, that is another issue. And then also technical know-how. We always talk about the education of the technicians, but we have to think about educate the distraction facility, and then also reclamation facility, and then also cylinder management side as well. And all those people have a certain expertise and certain knowledge to control and then to manage and perform their work. So that is not really considered, or people do not talk about it, but we really have to understand it. And then the legal system is another step. In Vietnam, Vietnam has already regulations like degree 6 and degree 8. But the thing is that we have to promote those degrees exist. People in the market do not know. So we have to let them know what the law that is, what the obligation, what they have to do. All those things has to be has to be known by the consumers. That is another work we have to do to disseminate the information of those degrees. Otherwise, people do not do what degree says. So the education of the consumers is very important. And then not only the technicians, but also the consumers is also very important. And then finally, economic mechanism. Who can pay? When we distract, that the distraction is the end of the life, right? End of the equipment, end of the substance. There's nothing to be generated. So, there is no profit at all. Who can pay, who can cover entire scheme? It's really expensive, actually. So who can pay that? The carbon credit is the one which can support it, but may not be 100%. We have to think about something. And then also the reclamation, while reclamation, or reclaimed refrigerant is expensive, as the initial investment is really expensive. So the end reclaimed refrigerant price is really high. And then how can reclaimed refrigerant demand be increased while virgin refrigerant is really cheap? Yeah, yesterday, Malaysian government said that the virgin refrigerant is now really cheap. So people cannot find the value in reclaimed refrigerant. So how can we increase the demand of the reclaimed refrigerant? As CC Lab said, that maybe the mandatory in the regulation or law to make the use of reclaimed refrigerant mandatory. However, that might have some problems. I'd like to talk about it later with you, but in the United States, there is a law. However, that might have some problems. So we really have to think about, otherwise that would disrupt the market a lot. So we really have to be careful about that. So this is the cost analysis we made in Vietnam. This is the very, how do you call it? The initial cost estimation, so that maybe, this can be reduced somehow, but, the cost construction would not be changed. Here, transportation, 12%, entire, the cost is like 18.2%, $18.2 is quite expensive. The virgin refrigerant in Vietnam is like $4, 410A, our 410A is $4, while virgin refrigerant is $4, who can do the $18.2 for the distraction. In this project, we did the cost estimation for the distraction, not the reclamation, but distraction. So in 18.2. So transportation, $12, and distraction is the 12%, and distraction is 45%. Most of the cost is, by the distraction treatment. And then equipment itself, and then transfer and refilling and the cleaning process, and then recovery technician and the equipment. All those costs has to be added to the treatment fee. So we needed to think about how to reduce all the cost, and then also who identify who can pay for it. Maybe not only one entity, but the collaboratively, we need to address that cost. So we can we can how do you call it? We can see the cost as the capex or opex. For the capex in initial investment in maybe international funding can cover it in maybe ADB or in the Japanese government or in the Montreal Protocol. All those international international institute can cover that capex. Maybe I don't know, but we need some discussion together. Okay, and then also the opex that maybe the government and then in the financial sector like carbon credit, and then so owners are responsible for the equipment itself, so they have to bear some. And then also NGO or NPO supportive action. That we do not ask the NPO or NGO to pay or do something about it, but like CC Lab, create some innovative idea to provide the support of the financial support. That kind of innovative idea may be created by NGO or NPOs. Okay, so this is the end of my story. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Yamanaka-san, for again the comprehensive information presentation that have full of information, especially on the cost structure. And okay, so let me invite the Yanase-san from ADB on the JCM, because for today's discussion, we are limiting the discussion for the disruption, but of course we also have are in the urgent needs for replacing the existing refrigerating equipment. So the JFJCM may be one of the support for that. Yeah. So.
Hey, good morning, everyone. This is Tatsuya from ADB. I know that we are already behind the schedule, so I try to keep it very simple. So this time my presentation is about introduction of one of the ADB's trust fund, which is Japan Fund for the Joint Credit Mechanism. I'm a fund manager of this trust fund. So one of the main objective to come here is that introduce this fund to you. Okay, so. Right. So this slide shows yesterday, just as a refreshment of your memory, that ADB is operating the carbon market programs for more than 10 years. As I said earlier, that there are two-pronged strategies. That one of the to provide a capacity building support, and then another one is provide a finding opportunity, carbon finance opportunities. So Japan Fund for the Joint Credit Mechanism is one of the trust fund located here. Okay, so this is the overview of our fund. So our fund was established in 2040 as ADB's trust fund, and this fund is contributed by the government of Japan. And now, at this moment, we have 136 million US dollars. And currently, we already put into the half of the the budget put into the ongoing project. That means that the rest of the budget can be utilized into the future potential project. And this fund can provide the financial incentives, which is grant for adoption of advanced low carbon technologies in ADB financed project that use the joint credit mechanism. Yeah, in terms of the JCM, I think that many of you are familiar with that mechanism itself. As you see in this here diagram, that usually there are Japan and the partner countries there, and Japan will provide some financial or technical support to the partner countries to develop the JCM project. Then that JCM project produce some amount of the greenhouse gas emission reductions. So after the MLB process, the amount of greenhouse gas emission reductions converted into the carbon credit under the JCM guideline. Then some of the carbon credit will be shared with the government of Japan to taking into some contribution from the government of Japan. So that's the scheme of the JCM. Okay, so then this fund is both sovereign and non-sovereign project is eligible. So both sovereign project means the project in which ADB lends to the central government or other entities with government guarantee. And non-sovereign project means the project in which ADB lends to the private sector or other entities without government guarantee. So that's different. Okay, so this is the JFJCM eligibility. As for the countries, currently we have now 18 eligible country for JFJCM. So that country should be JCM partner countries as well as the ADB partner countries. So that's why the 18 countries are eligible at this moment. This is the list of the eligible countries here, which includes the Central West Asian countries and also the most of countries in South Asian countries. Okay, so as for the project, we can support the investment project financed by ADB or ADB administered fund. So Japan Fund, JFJCM is ADB's trust fund. So that means that there should be some kind of foundation that project supported by other ADB's financing modality, such as ADB's loan or other ADB's trust fund. So we can put the grant on the project to introduce the advanced low carbon technology. That's the concept. Then also the ADB technical assistance for developing JFJCM pipeline project is also eligible. Okay, as for the eligible technologies, we can support the introduce the advanced low carbon technologies that reduce the greenhouse gas emission, including energy related CO2. So somehow the word kind of, advanced low carbon technology is something, tricky, but there's no kind of definition what is advanced. So we can discuss about what is the advancedness that technology we can support. So we can justify this is advanced, with taking into account of the local context. So then that technology must have proven implementation and operation records of its technical effectiveness. So that means that we cannot support the technologies that is R&D phase. Okay, so this is the JFJCM support scheme. So upper side of this slide shows the sovereign project case, and the downside is a non-sovereign project. Okay, so for sovereign project, the JFJCM provide a grant for incremental cost of advanced low carbon technologies. That means that usually the project try to introduce the conventional technologies, but if the project officer trying to introduce advanced low carbon technologies, there should be the financial gap there. So we're trying to fill the gap of this initial cost. So that's the use of the our grant. Then the maximum amount grant will be the 10% of total project cost, or but capped to 10 million, which is less we can provide as a maximum amount of grant. But if the total project cost is less than 50 million, we will provide the 5 million as a maximum. Then for the non-sovereign project, this is almost a similar, the modality, but on the top of ADB's loan, we will provide grant by milestone basis to support the deployment of advanced low carbon technologies. As for the maximum amount of grant is the same as sovereign project, 10% of total project cost. Okay, so there another kind of requirement of the JFJCM support. Not only for reducing the greenhouse gas emission reductions, but also we require some other kind of benefits, the other fields, like the other environmental benefits, such as reduction of the air pollution or some others, or the other social economic benefits for the improve the gender equality or something like that. Okay. Then the second one is the little bit tricky. This is about the cost effectiveness. This is not very strict guideline, but this is a requirement from the donor, government of Japan, try to ensure that, the certain level of the cost effectiveness. So we can provide the grant $40 per 1 ton CO2 greenhouse gas emission reduction. Okay, so maybe so that can be the another, ceiling of the, the maximum amount of grant. So depending of the, project size, this can be, the another, criteria to provide our grant. Okay, the last one is about, the GFGSM subcomponents cannot apply for other international carbon market mechanism. So this is a simple reason that, because, to avoid some very complex discussion or conflict to, about the for example, the allocation of the carbon credit or of the implementation of the project. So we are trying to avoid such a very complex situation. So that's why we are trying to request that we try not to apply for the other carbon finance. Okay, so this is a requirement for JCM. So actually, the JCM requirement is common as the JCM subsidy program provided by government of Japan. So this is happened after the approval of our ADB grant. But as you may know that there are a list of the JCM requirements here. So starting from the preparation and approval of the JCM methodology and preparation of project design document, the validation by a third-party entity, and the registration of the project. Then doing the monitoring, reporting the verification, then issuance of the carbon credit. So these series of requirements are same as the JCM subsidies program provided by government of Japan. And I think this is a very bit tricky and a very bit specific and technical, but the project implementer can employ the kind of consultant to support the project to develop this kind of necessary document by using our grant. And also our secretariat can, support entire process of JCM requirements. Okay, so this is the kind of for your information that this is a map of the key role of key entities in JCM project. So you can see the center of this diagram, there is a joint committee. This is a kind of government governing body of the JCM. So every kind of decision making is happening here. And in this joint committee is comprised of the representative of the, usually the government officials from such as Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ministry of Environment, other relevant ministries represented here. Then this green box is a project participants. Then project participant will provide necessary information and a document to submit to the joint committee. Then every decision making that happen here. Then third party entities sort of the independent sort of audit, body to audit all of this process. Okay, then the ADB and JCM secretariat is also out of this kind of, this map. But anyway, we will provide some kind of, financial or other support outside of these, the actors. Okay, so this is the list of the approval JCM project at this moment. And we have 8 approved projects. Okay, so yeah, this is, if you look at the country, there's a variation there, but I would say that there is 3 projects from Maldives, and then 2 projects from Mongolia, and another one is Bangladesh and Indonesia and Palau. Then if you look at the technologies supported by JFCSM, most of them are related to the energy related, part, like introducing the renewable energy or advanced battery system or energy management system. But some of them are related, the urban sector project. For example, the waste to energy plant in Maldives. Yeah, something like that. We are not only for looking for the energy sector project, but also the other sectors project. We are very happy to discuss about the potential applicability of our grant. Okay, so this is almost the last slide of my presentation. That just to give you an example of the the idea for the JFJC application in cooling sector. So this is the cold chain. Yeah, then the cold chain consists of several stages from production area to nearby storage, from the storage to the next relatively remote transit point, from there to retail store in the consumption area, then to the customer. So then among these stages in the above slide, producing area and stopover area, if the project is considering about rehabilitated facility or a newly development kind of facility, there could be some potential to apply for the JFJCM grant. So more specifically, this is one of the ideas of the advanced low carbon technologies to be introduced. So kind of advanced low carbon support. So this is the newly equipment for the introduce the natural refrigerant systems in the cooling system. So there should be some saving energy component, the kind of component we can support using the JFJCM. Okay. Sorry, this is a very simple, very plain example of the the applicability of JFJCM grant in the cooling sector. But not only this is just one idea. We are not. We are very keen to discuss about other potential or ideas to apply the JFJCM grant. We are every time open to discuss. So if you have come up with any idea of the project, yeah, please contact with us. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Yanase-san. So with all those, how can I say, the tools or the financial schemes that we hope that we can support the developing member countries on promoting life cycle management. So we are going to go into the coffee breaks, and before that, I would like to inform that we are planning to have the group session after the coffee break. We would like to come back to those seats as assigned here. Probably some of you might not be listed. In that case, please contact me. And we would like to have the coffee break for 10 minutes. So starting from now, so please come back by 10:40. Thank you.
Okay, welcome back to the session. We had excellent presentations regarding carbon markets. And now it's time to work together. Tamai-san, can I invite you to give a guidance to a group discussion?
Yeah. So for those who are coming from the countries, including Thailand, please be seated as indicated here. And for company people who are not listed here, or the international bodies people who are not listed here, you can participate freely on the discussion. So I suppose you are rearranged in those seats, or please move to those seats as assigned here. Okay. Or can I start my? Okay. So for this time slot, we are going to do some kind of the group work that more or less looks like similar to what we did yesterday, but with a focus on the carbon market in particular. The objectives for this session is to let you think about the action plans, not very plan but plan in promoting life cycle management through carbon market under Article 6. So suppose you are more or less interested in the carbon market, then please consider what you are going to do next right after you go back to your country. And to identify capacity gaps or challenges in introducing carbon market for HFC, we listened to a series of very informative presentation today. So you might have some ideas about this, or in case you are still not very confident about the what you can do with the carbon market and so on, then you can be very honest on this session, because we would like to also listen to your current status. If you are not very confident about whether you can do this or not, then that's the current status. Because there are several donors here, so we can learn from that we can start from the very first step. Yes, so there are some concerns as we listened to this morning as well as yesterday about the life cycle management. We have initial investment cost for the running cost and low coverage of recovery due to several reasons, that for example, lacking recovery network or lacking incentives for participants and so on. And so we had we listened to the presentation of Yamanaka-san about the cost structure. That was very interesting, that even with the carbon credit, it couldn't currently cover all the expenses for the recovery and the destruction project. It could be improved a little bit later, but still it will be it will fall into the comparative level each other probably. Taking that in my mind, in your mind, what is your expectation on carbon market? That the revenue from the carbon market could be utilized in several ways, such as government revenue, destruction fee, incentive for the company to invest, or the reward for participation, such as technicians or the end users. There may be several possible ways. So you can share your expectation on the carbon market first. Then the second question will be about the capacity building needs. Where are the capacity building needs, and what are the capacity building needs? I just listed here for your reference. This is not the exhaustive list, but kind of the example for your initiating your discussion. There may be some capacity building needs in the establishing the national system. On Article 6 is in particular, currently we only have the CO2 in many countries' national system of Article 6. So you might need to expand the gas species, and you may need to coordinate with your carbon credit counterpart in your country, or project implementation. MRV is very, very important. This is critical or deadly. So that may be something. For planning, for strategic use of carbon credit, you may need a proper planning. So that kind of thing may be also the capacity building needs. Accounting methodology, we already have one from the proposed from the CC lab, but that may be also a challenge, incentivizing stakeholders and so on. And there may be several stakeholders that may be involved in the preparation of the carbon credit project, as well as the establishing a national system. Of course, ODS administration or climate change administration, you may fall into either. And project developers, industrial association may have some roles, technicians, equipment owners. So we would like you to allocate who has to be trained in which way. What are the capacity building needs for those peoples? You can also freely expand these lists for your discussion. If you have some time, you can also think about the breaking down of the capacities listed here, or if you are a very advanced group, you could also prioritize, you could plan, you need this kind of capacity building first, and then next will be for this that kind of priority and schedule may be presented. So I would like you to I would like to invite you to the separate to be separate to the group, and then start your discussion. There will be several people who are more knowledgeable about the carbon markets in each group, so they could help your discussion as well. Okay, so yes. For specifically this slide, it's not shared yet, but yeah. Okay, so if you already see it as indicated, oops. 5番ですね。はい、はい、はい。すみません。So, what kind of capacity building needs exist in your country, or it may be yourself? That. So that's the questions, please, for you. Oh yes. We will have a discussion for 25 minutes. Then we will invite from each group to present your share your discussion later. Yeah, thank you. Sorry to interrupt you, but the time has running out. So I would like to invite any table. Oops, still going on. Okay, so let us resume, and I would like you to share what you discussed and hopefully finding, but mostly what you're going to do right after this the workshop after you go back to your country, what you want to do, or please also share the observation on the feasibility of carbon market in your country, or the personal learning things that may be also shared. Who would start with? Are there any volunteer? Maybe not. Maybe not. Then let me start from table one, group one.
Hello. We will be first. So we were a group of typically there's I don't need to speak to the camera, I'm going to speak to the room. Okay, there was a lot of island nations here. We also had representation from Thailand and Indonesia. And one of the things that we really spoke about was how, in terms of capacity building, oftentimes, especially in the context of island nations, there's only small amounts of refrigerant and no infrastructure for recovery or destruction. And so the question was, what would a regional sort of initiative look like? So far, we've talked a lot about one centralized destruction facility and bringing the refrigerant there. But in the case of island nations, is there a possibility that actually, instead of the gas being the mobile aspect, the destruction or the reclaim facility was mobile? So we thought about essentially the role of storage, of aggregation and storage being on the individual sort of member nations, but that a destruction facility or a reclaim facility could visit those sort of regional hubs. And sort of, we talked about essentially who would bear what costs of that. And how would some of the proceeds from whether it was carbon credits for destruction or reclamation, how could that come back into the member nations so that each of the sort of administrative aspects, as well as all of the individual sort of collection activities, the technician fees, things like that, that could be funded? Do you want to talk a little bit about some of the larger waste questions? So beyond simply refrigerants, thinking about companies that could address larger groups.
So from that, a point from one of the presentations yesterday from the, what is it, DOA group? That one, that's my first time seeing a company that pretty much takes care of all waste all at once, because we're so used to different agencies, separate companies coming in, and they just, they tend to only stick to specific type of waste. As we all know, there's like people that just concentrate on plastic, some just concentrate on lithium batteries. There's just all kinds. And that was the first presentation that encompassed a lot of different hazardous waste. And that's something that we have a problem with in the islands. We have waste landfills where they do the segregation of the different types of waste, and they do it what they can with what we have and the capabilities that we have with reuse and recycling. But for the most part, we're exporting our recyclables. Like they pack it up, ship it out to somewhere. And something like that would be beneficial, like that company that does all types of waste in the Pacific. Probably also with the Caribbean countries as well, because we're always told, and this is something that I've been asking for a whole lot, that centralized ways for all the Pacific countries. And we always hear, oh, you don't have enough refrigerants. The cost and the benefit, it just doesn't make sense. So I'm like, okay. And then it's another problem comes up. We go to another symposium for the environment or something, and they're like, oh, hazardous waste is a problem. We're just storing, we're not disposing. We don't have any means of disposal. But we're always told it's never enough of any one thing, right? It's not enough metal, it's not enough aluminum, it's not enough refrigerant, it's not enough battery. So a company that does all of those types of waste all at once would probably benefit more in our region, where it's a little bit of everything, but it takes everything all at once from each of all the different countries. And we're always working as a region because of the lack, we're limited population and capacity. So that's just an idea that we're trying to hopefully come into fruition. And this seminar has really opened up our eyes to all the other possibilities that out there.
Thank you very much. Actually, the group one was intentionally gathered from the small island countries, and that was very interesting to listen to. And for holistic waste approach, that may be also important, and that could be also combined with the carbon credit as a whole, not only the HFC. And then, shall we invite the group 2, if possible? They are actually the landlocked countries and the cold countries in particular, but so please, somebody from the group 2 in table 3.
Thank you. The wrap up from our group 2, we have the participant from Mongolia, Kyrgyzstan, and Thailand. And the capacity building is we have to find the carbon credit scheme suitable for each country and find the incentive and player to do in each step. And the important thing, one more, is find the infrastructure, something like the collection center or destruction facility or reclamation facility. And one more important thing is about how to do the collection, how to give the incentive to technician to collect the refrigerant into the management system. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Then can we invite group 5 of the table 6, if possible?
Hello, I don't know what the group this is, but we have Vietnam, Thailand, Philippines, and Indonesia on the table, and we went over each country situation and how we all are at the preliminary stage. Some have voluntary markets already, some not yet. So we'll just go around the table so that each country can share their different situation.
Okay, for Thailand, we don't have mandatory carbon market yet. We have only voluntary carbon market, and we have our own country scheme. It's called TVER. It's like Thailand Voluntary Greenhouse Gas Emission Reduction. Yeah, and now there is no methodology about refrigerant. They have the draft methodology about refrigerant. It's like I think it's follow CDM, like change or replace the high GWP refrigerant to low GWP refrigerant, like natural refrigerant. Yeah.
And I will add another aspect of Thailand point of view. Actually, I'm from the power generating sector of Thailand, and we are now have like it's look alike carbon credit market is called renewable energy certificate. It's like in Thailand we are producing energy. I think 10% is from hydropower, and we convert this amount of hydropower into it's like a carbon credit, but it's not called carbon credit, and we sell these certificates to people who want it, like the organization or the company that would like to reduce their greenhouse gas inventory in scope 2. And I think from the lesson that we have learned is like, I think in terms of the policy maker, we have to match about the demand and the supply, because in this market, the renewable energy certificate, there are actually some demand, because some policy from the foreign country like CBAM, carbon border adjustment mechanism, is like forcing them to reduce this kind of thing, and they have to buy it. And yes, I think one of the most important that we have to consider is about the demand and supply of the credit. Yes, and that's for Thailand.
So for the for the Philippines, unfortunately, I'm not part of the group that was in charge of Article 6. But the short answer is they have the Philippines has a carbon credit mechanism. Unfortunately, I don't know the details, but I know that the most basic information that we had is the greenhouse inventory. And I think one of the questions earlier was the gases that we were going to include there. So there we had the CO2, SF6, nitrous oxides, methane, perfluorocarbons, and of course HFCs and nitrogen trifluoride. So yeah. Okay.
Hi everyone, it's good to talk something. So in my country, Vietnam, the voluntary market is still ongoing, so we haven't started with the compliant market. So, but I believe some schemes such as the JCM with Japan and like the ATMO with Korea will be a really good foundation for my country to establish the market first, to give more time for the government to provide the sufficient regulation, and also provide the capacity building for the private sector. So regarding to the refrigerant fuel, I think the first step we can have some really good support and cooperation with some pilot project under the GCM scheme with the Japan partner to transfer the amount of the destructed refrigerant to the carbon credit. So looking forward to the future to have more sufficient regulation for the compliant carbon credit market. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm from Indonesia. Maybe the difficulty in Indonesia is that various ministries play a role in carbon market. So, such as Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Environment, and Ministry of Investment, and Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources. So maybe the Ministry of Environment to be made the regulator in the carbon trading policies, and for the Ministry of Energy to manage the energy sector which contribute to carbon emissions. And for the Financial Service Authority regulate and supervise the carbon exchange, and for the Ministry of Finance to manage the fiscal aspects in incentive related to carbon trading. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Because they're all from the emerging economy, we identify that they still face much difficulty. Then probably for the international cooperation participants today, you may have learned that there'll be a many chance to cooperate for that. Then let me invite the table 5, the group 4.
Hello everyone, I'm Aditya Garg, and we have in this table countries like of Indonesia, Maldives, Cambodia, and we went on discussing the carbon markets at a higher level. Actually, we didn't dive more into refrigerant management. We wanted to understand that how important it is to have HFCs within the NDCs gases, if it is important to have HFC within NDC so as to utilize the international carbon market or compliance carbon market and the carbon market like joint crediting mechanism. We are open to have answers from you all as well. We discussed how it is important to have HFC inventory to start trading carbon credits and get them corresponding adjustments if you are trading it with outside country or another country. And we also discussed the idea that if HCFCs and HCFCs are not included in the NDC gases under the Kyoto Protocol, if it is essential to have CFCs and HCFCs within the national carbon market because, so that it can be easily traded when country has implemented their own carbon market within their country. This was one point of discussion, and then we discussed how corresponding adjustment happens in the international carbon market, how it has happened in past and how it can happen in future. Regarding the capacity building of the country, so have to have more stringent rules or MRV mechanism and have high integrity credits. We started off with how it is important to have firstly train the government stakeholders or the government officers who are implementing Article 6 within their country, so that at least at the higher level, there is a capacity built to track how the credits are made and how it can be made functional, because this idea of carbon market is very new for the emerging economies and developing countries in Southeast Asian nations. Thank you. And we would love to hear from all of you the questions I've raised.
Yeah, thank you very much. Actually, the transparency and NDCs are the one of the prerequisites for the tapping on the carbon market. But we didn't talk much about that this morning. But still, you focus on that, and we do appreciate your findings. Yeah, thank you very much. And last but not least, the table group 3, table 4.
So it's been really long, so I'm not sure whether I remembered everything that we discussed, but if there's any lacking things, so would you please help? We started with discussing, we needed not only focus on our carbon market. We have to look at the entire scheme, in holistic scheme, and then from the holistic viewpoint, what kind of funding are available, not only the carbon credit, but also in a multilateral fund or in other international scheme can, fund the capital investment or, initial investment, all that kind of things. But, how to sustain the operational, OPEX, operational cost, maybe in carbon credit, one of the scheme, but not entirely cover the entire cost. So how can we do that? That is another question. So we have to investigate what funding would be the suitable for what stage and for what, that kind of, investigation is necessary. And then when we talk about the carbon credit, illegal dealing, illegal trade, can always sneak in. So how to prevent them? In order to prevent them, we have to have the very stringent ruling, that would prevent the, implementation of the carbon credit system or not. That kind of things has to be considered as well. So we are in a very initial stage. So we have to investigate all the possible ways of getting funding. So please, if there are any other item you would like to add.
It would be very useful if there is when the first project approved based on carbon containment lab methodology and make available kind of experience learned, because some of the criteria you need to prove how stringent it is. That would be very important for all of us in order to maybe use the same methodology or adjust it. Yeah.
Thank you very much. It sounds like very negative to carbon credit, but it's not. We are things that we would like to investigate all the possible, source of funding. That's our message. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Actually, that one of our the knowledge products will also discuss something about the alignment of the different funding sources that may be utilized for the whole project and or even the whole life cycle management. Of course, the carbon market is not only the solution, but it can certainly help. So thank you very much for your active participation to this kind of vague the title of the discussion. Thank you very much. So I'd like to close this session, and I would like you to inform that we put the QR code in your each of your table that is inviting you to the evaluation form. It doesn't have to be now, but please scan the URL now, and then maybe after you come back from the site visit this afternoon, please give your feedback. We actually do need this kind of thing for the ADV's reporting. So thank you very much, and we will have the information about. We will have some guidance for the afternoon's site visit. So I will take that Kato-san will take over. Thank you.
Thank you, Tamai-san, and also we appreciate for your active participation. We are going to have a very final statement by our big friend Nathan for the final part. But before that, I just want to. Would you like us to me to explain about the study visit now? Okay. So this is a very the technical announcement. まずね、まずここ、いやいや、もう今やっちゃう。今やっちゃう。まずどこに集まるか、ここの向こうじゃなくて、ここで何時に集まるか。
はい。
So I am going to give you some instruction about today's site visit. ありがとうございます。Today we are going to visit supermarket Lotus Bankapi, and when we are leaving from here, we are going to meet at the lobby at 12:20? No, 1:20. Yes, after lunch. And we are going to leave here at 1:30. And in Lotus Bankapi, we are going to visit a machine room, and machine room is a bit small space, so we have to divide people into 3 groups. And we are requested to wear a safety jacket or kind of vest. And you have to receive interpretation receiver before going into there. And in the bus, we are going to distribute a wristband in colors to divide people into 3 groups. First group will be receiving the red wristband, and the second group will receive yellow ones, and the third group will receive the green ones. The first group, wait a minute. In the bottom of this map, you see KFC and McDonald's. There, you are going to get off the bus and go to the right side to take the escalator to Watson's. And in front of the Watson's, you see red circle. That is the meeting point. The first group will, all of you guided to Watson's to know where the Watson's is. And first group will directly go to Lotus to see the machine room. And the second group will meet in 20 minutes or so. And then the second group will be guided to the machine room, and the third group will be meeting in front of Watson's about 1 hour later. But precise time will be informed in the bus, because we are not sure how many minutes it will take to arrive there. So, and after all of you finished seeing the machine room, you will meet in front of Watson's again, and we go back to the bus. Bus is probably parking in the right side of the building, but we are not pretty sure about this because sometimes it's clouded by other cars. So please be sure to come to front of the Watson's. It's a drugstore here. And if you are late for the meeting at the end of the tour, we might have to leave you, or you can decide to stay there. It's not too far from here. If you take taxi, it's like under 200 bahts by taxi to Sukoson. So so it's you don't have to be too disappointed even if you miss the bus, and because seminar ends at Lotus Bankapi, and we are not going to wrap up here again. So so that way you don't have to be too disappointed. But anyway, it's easier to take bus, so be sure to come back to Watson's at the time we are going to inform you in the bus. Thank you.
So the afternoon is a fun time, but we will see the refrigerant leakage detector and how it's installed in supermarket refrigerant refrigeration system. So it's a good to have a look. Yeah. Okay. With this, we have completed the entire program in the meeting room for day 1 and day 2, and I really want to congratulate the fruitful discussion and also very insightful presentation. And then Yeah, I think we still want to discuss, we still want to question, we still want to get be connected with each other, and please stay in touch with each other. I think that this is a very important asset that we have created through this group seminar, and also at your home, you are working very hard on refrigerant management for ozone layer protection, but also climate change mitigation. So that's something I just wanted to share with you. Also, to follow up on the contents of the discussion today, we are sharing our PowerPoint presentations in some photos and also IFC sorry not IFC but IFL Secretariat this time. We're happy to be the catalyst of your joint efforts. We have been and continued to be supported by the Ministry of the Environment Japan, Asian Development Bank, and also CCAC. So that's very powerful support. And also, we really appreciate your individual and collective inputs to our activities. And we plan to have more activities for in country program, but also mock meeting in forthcoming October here in Bangkok again. So that's something I just wanted to share with you. But so that's it from myself. But now I would like to invite Nathan to give a final word from the organizers.
So I'm in the unenviable position of standing between you and lunch, which is always a problematic place to be. And for those of you who know me, I'm not very good at being brief. And my colleagues at the CCAC Secretariat know that very well. So they've provided me with talking points, and I'm going to try to stick to them. On behalf of all of the Climate and Clean Air Coalition, particularly Martina Otto, the head of our secretariat, and Denise San Valentin, who I hope is online with us today, but is the coordinator for our cooling hub. I'd like to thank the organizers for pulling together this incredible event. And for all of you for participating so diligently in the incredible discussions and presentations that I've had a chance to participate in. It has really been a robust and very participatory workshop, and I think there a lot of credit goes to the IFL Secretariat in particular for pulling this together. So thank you very much for that. Life cycle management of fluorocarbons has been a priority of the Climate and Clean Air Coalition for a very long time, going back, in fact, to 2018, when I was the coordinator of our efficient cooling initiative. I worked very closely with the burgeoning IFL Secretariat, the then planned IFL Secretariat to help support their initiative in Japan, across Asia, and all over the world to really put a spotlight on the opportunities that exist when it comes to looking at cooling systems as a true system, to leverage that system to achieve real mitigation and meaningful change. Through the Montreal Protocol and through other mechanisms. I was very honored to actually have been at the Madrid COP in 2019 for the official launch of the IFL. And I'm very happy to see how far it has come since then. We have collaborated since that point with IFL and our broader community of over 90 countries and nearly 100 IGOs and NGOs in the CCAC to really put a spotlight and fund opportunities and action in life cycle management of refrigerants. That includes the publication of a resource book on life cycle management of fluorocarbons, in 2020. And our continued support and work in this space has led to a lot of incredible progress. And I just want to highlight that since that time, there's been an incredible elevation in the awareness of this opportunity. That includes the publication in 2022 of a report by EIA, IGSD, and NRDC that identified 90 billion metric tons of CO2 mitigation potential in this century from life cycle management of refrigerants. This has been referred to a number of times in this workshop, and it's not a small number. So it's something that we can capture. It's something that we have to capture, and it's exciting that we can leverage this Montreal Protocol community and potentially the climate community to capture that. Then, following the publication of that report, we saw the landmark decision at COP35, Decision 11, incentivizing or mandating the TEEP to look into this issue and the opportunities there. And we got a presentation on a summary of that report that was spawned from that decision yesterday. Because of all of this, the international community has really sees this as a golden opportunity. I'm going back specifically to my notes here. Otherwise, I'm going to keep talking. I'm sorry. The goal is a golden opportunity to exponentially multiply the benefits of the transition of or the phase down and hopefully eventual phase out of the use of HFCs. And the additional benefits that we can squeeze out of really looking at the full life cycle of refrigeration. So we are committed in the CCAC to stay involved deeply in this space through all of the mechanisms that we have. That includes country project funding, convening and political support and advocacy with our partners, particularly IFL, but all of our partners in the cooling space going forward. We're very grateful to the Ministry of Environment of Japan for their continuing support to cooperate with committed countries, and to the OECC and IFL Secretariat and the ADB as well for their leadership in this space. We will continue to work together to invite colleagues in this room to join our working group on LRM in the CCAC. For those of you there are a few countries in here that are not yet partners of the CCAC. We welcome you guys to join. Those of you who are members of partner countries in the CCAC, our hubs are, we have a cooling hub, we have 6 sectoral hubs, but those are spaces where our entire community comes together in a very egalitarian way to talk about opportunities and explore all of the sectors that we work in the CCAC, but the cooling hub is particularly active, and I encourage all of you who would like to be involved with it, who are not currently involved, to either reach out to me, but particularly reach out to my colleague Denise San Valentin, who is the coordinator of that hub. And following on what Makoto was saying there at the end, I very much hope to see all of you back here at the end of October for a 2-day workshop on LRM that's being organized by the Ozone Secretariat. Denise tells me in my notes here that it's going to happen on the 27th of October. I didn't know that had been confirmed, but I think the idea was 2 days before the MOP that there'd be a workshop particularly on LRM. And so, yes, I hope to welcome you all back here for a follow-up for that event organized by the Ozone Secretariat and the CCAC and IFL. So again, thank you all for your active participation in this workshop. It really has been quite eye-opening, and I think we've got a lot to take away and digest from this, and hopefully we can digest over the next month and a half and come back with a fully digested set of ideas, and we can turn that into even more action in late October. So enjoy the site visit, enjoy Bangkok. I moved to Bangkok 3 weeks ago, so I'm a new resident. But I feel like I can welcome and invite you back here. I feel like an old hand here. So hopefully you get an opportunity to see more of the city, not just the inside of a compressor room this afternoon, which should be really, really interesting, I suspect. Anyways, thank you again. Enjoy your lunch and the rest of your afternoon here. And safe travels home.
So this concludes this workshop in this meeting room. Thank you very much.